Hello and welcome back to the channel. This is OK Comics, and today we're going to take a second look at the Image Illustrated special from Hero Illustrated to talk about the secret origin of Image Comics, for which we are mostly going to use the Jim Valentino introduction. Thank you, Joe Kyoto Fairchild, as well as the Rob Liefeld interview. I apologize in advance for the outside noise. There's going to be some background music and probably some barking. We are having the Harvest Festival in the town where I live in, and that tends to cause a lot of activity that is completely outside of my control. So I'm just going to try to be as loud as I possibly can to offset the outside noise. But with that out of the way, let's get to it. So, most of the chronology of the image creation is here in the Jim Valentino introduction, and but I'm not going to read through all of it because it would be kind of boring and kind of copyright infringing. But I can give you a brief summary. So, according to Valentino, Rob Liefeld had already been thinking about being involved in the entire process of making a comic book from start to finish, instead of just penciling it, for quite some time up to that point. And there was an after convention dinner at a Mexican restaurant in which there were Valentino himself, Rob Liefeld, Eric Larson's brother, Jim Valentino's wife, Dave Albrecht from Malibu Comics, and some other people. And during the dinner, Rob approached Albrecht and asked him if Malibu Comics would be interested in publishing something made by either him or Todd or Jim Valentino, to which Dave Albrecht replied, yes, of course. And everybody kind of brushed it off as a bit of a joke, but Liefeld kept thinking about it. And after thinking about it, he started making calls and talking with Albrecht further. And basically, they got to an agreement to publish an original Rob Liefeld book called The Executioners, which, by the way, was the concept that eventually became The Berserkers, the book that was drawn by a young Dan Fraga, who, by the way, doesn't appear here. So an ad appeared in early September of 1991 in Comic Buyer's Guide, an ad announcing both the Executioner's title and the new imprint under which it was going to be published, a Malibu imprint called Image Comics, a name taken from a TV commercial where a tennis star player delivered the motto of that advertising campaign, which was "Image is everything." And one of the interesting things about this article is that it has actual dates. So according to this, on September the 13th, 1991, Rob Liefeld received several calls telling him that if he didn't pull the ad and killed the entire project, he was going to be fired from Marvel. So he did, and the Executioners never came out. It's probable that Marvel thought that things had ended there and then, but of course, that's the point that Liefeld started having an actual grudge with Marvel Comics. And the thing is that, well, artists were getting greedy at the time. Legendary artist Neil Adams had pushed for royalties on comic books, so that instead of just making a flat fee for their pages, that artists would also make royalties on the sales of the books, meaning that whoever sold more would make more money, and that made the artists more competitive between each other. That caused artists to be more interested in having a unique and recognizable style to draw sales, and that eventually led to the era of the superstar artists of the 90s. Um, and some artists, like Liefeld himself, were thinking, well, I already get nice royalties, but if I actually owned the characters that I created, I would make even more money. So that was already in the air. And then this happens when Liefeld tries to make a creator owned project, he is denied that. And then the straw that actually broke the camel's back was that Rob was in talks, excuse me, Rob was in talks, thank you, Chippy Captain America, to make an art book, the Art of Rob Liefeld book, by the same guys that had made the art of George Perez, the art of Frank Miller, and the art of John Byrne. And the thing with that kind of book is that you have to get permission from the original publishers to reprint their stuff. So, in order to make the art of Rob Liefeld, they would have needed to get the permission from DC and from Marvel to republish what Rob had made for them, like the Hawk and Dove stuff and the New Mutant stuff and all that. And it turns out that both DC and Marvel decided to deny Rob, decided to deny the permission. So that's when Liefeld realized that even though he had pulled the ad and had suspended the execution of his project, he was still being punished for stepping out of the line and having dared to do something outside of what he was doing at one of the mainstream companies. So basically, that's what triggered the whole thing. And next thing we know, he has talked with Valentino himself and with Eric Larson about branching off from the company and owning their own creations and publishing their own creations. To which Larson was very enthusiastic because it was an opportunity to to further develop the Savage Dragon character that he had been working with on the Megaton comics. And Jim Valentino, well, I don't know why Jim Valentino accepted the offer, because in his interview, it's actually stated that there was a lot of trepidation because he wasn't a top seller at the time. But regardless, he decided to go in. So there were three. Then they talked with McFarlane and basically convinced him out of retirement, because McFarlane had already left Spider-Man and he was thinking whether or not he was interested in continuing to make comics. But they convinced him to go back, and that's why he joined. And the last two guys to join this Image Comics initiative were Jim Lee and Mark Silvestri, which probably helps explain why the concept of their books is so half-baked when compared to the other ones. I mean, let's face it, there really wasn't a lot of thought before the creation of any of these characters. They are mostly just blatant copies of existing Marvel and DC characters with the serial numbers poorly filed off, or at best, amalgamations of characters, like Amalgam Comics before Amalgam. But still, the concept for Cyberforce and Wildcats are kind of the more blatant of them all. But anyway, so once Jim Lee and Mark Silvestri have joined the team, that's when the infamous meeting with Terry Stewart from Marvel Comics took place. So it was Todd McFarlane, Rob Liefeld, and Jim Lee. And they went to Terry Stewart's office. And apparently, Rob and Jim were kind of going to talk terms or something, especially Jim. Jim thought that things were going to be much more friendly. So they told Stewart that they were branching out, that they were going to create their own stuff and own it. And Stewart offered them the Epic imprint. But as Liefeld mentions in this part of the interview, well, the Epic imprint was there, and that is where Marvel published actual creator-owned stuff. Walter Simonson's Starjammers was first professionally published as an Epic book, but Marvel never pushes or advertises creator-owned stuff, never advertises Epic as strongly as they do their own stuff. No Epic book is supported as much as Wolverine, which makes sense. But that's not the kind of deal that they wanted, so they decided to not take it. Now, apparently what happened was that McFarlane took the stage and told Terry Stewart in no uncertain terms that they didn't need Epic Comics. I'm very curious to know what sort of language did he use. I get the impression that it was very unprofessional, but I guess we'll never know. So, anyway, from that point on, there was no way back. So, the future Image creators quit Marvel en masse and started working on their projects, if they had not started with them already. And then, on March 13th, 1992, the first Youngblood Ashcan was released, and as they say, the rest is history. Now, there's one thing that has to be mentioned about this recollection of events. This information comes from, well, this introduction and an interview with a creator that is well known for having a really large ego, who was at the height of his career when this interview was made, and it is being published in a magazine that is a giant ad for Image Comics. So obviously, no assholery is going to be admitted to on the part of Rob Liefeld, if there ever was one. Which, unless we can speak with Terry Stewart, I guess we'll never know. So that's how Image Comics came about. And as we can see, from September 1991 to March 1992, that's basically 6 months of events. That September, October, November, December, January, February, March. Yes. So that's 6 months between the Executioner's incident and Youngblood #1. So that's pretty fast for making up a company, coming up with a concept for a comic, and drawing a couple of issues, really. So, again, we can see kind of an explanation of why were some projects sort of half-baked and not so fully developed. But that's the story, according to Jim and Rob. I don't know what would the others have to say on the matter. Given his later actions, I have the feeling that Jim Lee wasn't all that into creators' rights as the other guys were. Um, but still, those are the incidents that gave us Image Comics and all of the craziness and nonsense that came with it, which, according to some, almost brought the comic book industry to its extinction. Some others say that they saved it. I guess at this point, it's a matter of opinion. It's what happened, at least according to them. So I hope this video has been not completely boring, at least mildly entertaining and somewhat informative. Please let me know if you want me to delve into another one of the interviews or the write-ups, or talk about something else, um, which I probably will do anyway, because the advantage of having a YouTube channel that nobody watches is that I can do whatever the hell I want and not worry about the algorithm. But please, do the YouTube things, like, subscribe, tell me what you think in the comments below. And I guess that's it. I have to really come up with a better closing for these videos. And this is OK Comics signing off.